Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to the course, Disaster Recovery and Build Back Better. My name is Ram Satish. I am Assistant Professor in Department of Architecture and Planning, IIT Roorkee. Today, we are going to discuss about the Build Back Better practices, especially in the case of progressive housing in El Salvador. This is also one of the important chapter which has been compiled in the Build Back Better, which has been edited by Michael Lyons and Theo Schilderman and Camille Bono. And it is from the practice side of it, how they brought all the lessons from practice. And this is where it's been edited by Carmen Ferrer and Calvo with Concepcion Herreros and Thomas Mata. So this is a chapter I'm going to discuss and how after 2001 earthquake in El Salvador, how the reconstruction activities have started and what are the processes that they have implemented and what are the learnings we are taking back for that, how it has informed the other practices also and in that region, and it is also giving us some kind of guidance what to do and what not to do, and how community participation is also very relevant, and what are the stages of the participation and what are the roles of each organizations. And there is a participation, partnership, and also the coordination and the supervision of it. So all these things collectively put into the kind of management of the project. So many of you, at least from the Asian geographies, many of you may not have heard of El Salvador, which is the smallest country in the Central America. So it is about the 48% of inhabitants of El Salvador live in the poverty or in extreme poverty. So it's almost, if you look from the North American and so this is where the El Salvador comes. And many of you have to understand that the America, the North America and the South America is very diverse. Even within North America, there's very great diversity exists and great challenges exist within the North American region. And in South American, though they have the richest mining sector and the richest natural beauty, but they also have been unequally distributed with various challenges, especially with the earthquakes, which is very common in South American case. In other classes, we have also discussed in the case of Peru, how it has been dealt. And today we are going to discuss about the El Salvador. So this particular disaster 2001, and this has been destroying more than 200,000 houses, and already there is also vulnerable component of existing housing shortage, plus the earthquake, the disaster adds on to it. So what are these existing shortages, existing vulnerabilities? From 78 to 92, there's a very cruel civil war which has killed more than 125,000 people. And the moment you are talking about a civil war, it has had impact on the economy and the major infrastructures. In 1986, then again a severe earthquake has hit the San Salvador. More than 40,000 houses has been destroyed. And prior to 2001, in 1998, this Hurricane Mitch has produced the serious floods, killing 250 people and affecting the most successful experiences of the post-conflict reintegration process. So in 2001, again, it has, one is a major earthquake which has been affected within a span of 30 days. It has affected 6 points of Richter scale earthquake has been hit. And about 85% of the national territory has been under impact. And now you can see here is a multiple disaster, being hilly areas, the mountainous areas. You can see the landslides along with it. Not only the earthquakes, the ground is not just moving around, it's a huge landslides. On the other side, you have the hurricanes, which is again, so there's a multiple hazard phenomenon which existed in El Salvador geography. And one is, after the earthquake, obviously many NGOs come into the picture, and they want to give their helping hand or the support or the technical expertise or a kind of financial supports. So that is how, this is the time different Red Cross associations, like one is the Spanish Red Cross along with the Salvadoran Red Cross, how they have also associated within the Red Cross associations, how they have also associated with each other, so that they can learn from other practices which they have already learned from different parts of the globe. So that is how they have come together, and they have come up with, rather than a core housing concept, they started with a progressive housing as a solution, because they have considered different experiences, what they have learned, and that is where they have come up with a progressive solutions. So one is, what is progressive approach? These are the houses developed in different stages in incremental way, right? And many people gets a core house approach versus with the progressive housing. In a core house approach, we give a core dwelling unit and then people add on to it. So they try to make in a kind of bigger, like what you can see here is, you provide some basic things and then people add on to it. Like here, the Alexandros work, which has been the Pritzker Award holder, and you can see his work in Chile, so what it has been provided and what the people have made incrementally, how they have modified these places. But here one has to understand, it's like the incrementality is almost like 100% of increase. But this is something, whether it is possible or not, that one has to look into it. But whereas in progressive approach, it is unlike the core dwelling, it's not making a house bigger, but we are making a house finished, to the complete manner. That is the most important aspect of the progressive approach. And when the first earthquake hit in 2001, the Spanish Red Cross has created the special plan for earthquakes in El Salvador, which is the PITIS, in accordance with the plan of action of Salvadorian Red Cross. It includes 3 phases. One is the emergency phase, the stabilization and the rehabilitation and humanitarian aid, and recovery and the reconstruction phase, which is the final phase. So in the emergency phase, it talks about, because of the earthquake and landslides, removing the debris, the search and rescue and the first aids, providing health, evacuations, search, some family reunifications have been taken up, relief delivery like food, shelter, the basic needs, the hygiene conditions, the epidemic and endemic disease controls in the relief camps. So this is the whole part contributes to the emergency phase. Once people gradually stabilize and rehabilitation, the humanitarian aid phase, this is where the global strategies to cover basic needs of displaced population in shelter, water and sanitation, livelihood, and also the psychological support for mental health. And in recovery and the reconstruction phase. So it is a follow up on with the previous phase, and this phase is the identification and definition of projects to rebuild the houses of infrastructure, and as well as the projects for community and the economic development. So now this is how they come up with. One is the various intervention strategies, how the partnership of these Red Cross associations have brought together. And one is, they had 2 options of resettlement with the contractor built approach and reconstruction with the progressive housing approach, how they come together and how they make it in a progressive approach. One is, in the rebuilding process, they have given one of the important aspect is the participatory aspect and the community. and it has to be a continuous process. It is not that the important lesson they learned is you deliver and you move away. So it has to be a continuous effort how one can raise their capacities and take it in a continuous approach. Environmental protection and the sensitivity to cultural factors. So it didn't just only this progressive approach, it didn't end only with construction of the dwelling, but the original design was conceived so that it can be extended and improved by the users in their own time depending on their resources and needs. So how they can expand with their own feasibilities on the resources. So there are some general guiding principles of this progressive housing approach. The houses were built on the same land on which they have existed before the earthquakes. One of the reasons they have to think about this because first of all, they should make sure that this is not at risk of flooding or landslides. So they have to ensure that whatever the land in the nearest possible vicinity, so they need to build on the same land or at least in the nearby vicinity. And the families held the ownership of the land because in this aspect, the main important aspect, and the Gujarat recovery also we did discussed about the Catholic Relief Services, how they manage the housing in their own land, because first of all the sense of ownership is retained as it is. Okay. The most important part in the earthquake resistance is you have to ensure that this is going to be an earthquake resistant building, and it could be capable of withstanding an earthquake similar to those that has occurred without collapsing. So it has to ensure that there is no loss of human life and the damage produced would be repaired by the users themselves, so that it could be repaired by minimal interventions and the community themselves can repair it as quickly as possible. And the constructed area per house was about 42 square meter, and 36 of which would be roof divided into 3 rooms with a porch measuring of 6 square meter outside. So this have been implemented the participatory approach where the communities were involved in the process. So I'll discuss with you with the process how the community was involved and how it is related to the built form and the project management. And community involvement was essential during the whole process from the design of the house to the completion of the house. So there are 3 stages. One is the first stage, the basic construction of the structural elements. We talk about any structural elements like the foundations, the columns, the structure, the basic structure of it. And then these individuals from each family within the community have contributed to the unskilled labor that has created some kind of employment opportunities. And this has also enhanced the participation. And now in this, the moment the community is coming forward to provide some kind of unskilled labor to make their own houses where they feel dignity about making their own house. In the stage 2, there are associations, the Red Cross supplied some materials, like for example in terms of hollow concrete blocks or any other which are not locally available. And it also have provided the necessary technical advice through the local technical teams. So the site supervisors. And again the materials, how the Red Cross has provided the materials which are not available locally. And the stage 3, which is talking about the completion, which has the portable water supply and the household plumbing systems, which are onto the service mechanism part of it. Now how this whole process, the community participation has been approached. One is they talked about approaching through the social organizations, the communities, the local communities through their own networks. So because the Red Cross personnel will be coming from somewhere else who may or may not be familiar with the local communities, and that is where the ADESCO, which is a kind of community organization, has become a kind of interface between the local communities and the various NGOs coming and working in it. In that process, what happens is communities establish a trust on these agencies which can actually negotiate and create an interface between both the groups. So finally, after having a thorough analysis of the 14 communities in San Vicente, they have selected 9 communities within that 14 for the reconstruction process. So, for this progressive housing project, mainly they have covered in the two major municipalities. One is the Tecluca and Verapaz within the department of San Vicente, and each community includes El Arco, Llano Grande, El Puneto, Santa Cruz de Palacio, San Pedro, San Jose de Borjas, Nuevo Oriente, San Antonio Jiboa, San Isidro. So these are all contributing about 582 houses. Now, the all issue to do with the land tenure. So the people who were already legal owners of the land or had a land ownership documents, so that these particular communities have been processed, and these communities have received help from the town hall and were provided with the professional service of lawyer, which brought down the cost of the process. So once they have a legalized document, legalized process of it, so it can actually have brought the regulatory framework into the process so that it can cut down some cost. But there were also some families whose houses are located on a land that belonged to a railway company, because you have the revenue land, you have the railway land, or in some cases you have the mining authorities land. So, but in this case, the people who are residing on the railway land, so or to other private individuals, so these people have been excluded from the project for reasons of ownership. So this is how this has been considered. But obviously one has to look at it, obviously what happens to these, what kind of NGO support they give, because the basic tenure also makes a big difference in the criteria of the selection of the the beneficiaries. And how it is implemented. As I said to you, it's a participatory design methodology. The communities have collectively prepared a house design. So with a think tank process has went to the bottom level interactions. And what they did was to get a real scale understanding. So they made about the outlines with just 2 lines of blocks, that this is going to be your space. So you have, this is your room, and this is the veranda, this is another room. So basically they made a mark out plan with keeping the 2 lines of the block so that they get a real space understanding with 1:1 scale. Then the house is consisted of a unit with a gable roof and walls made of concrete hollow blocks reinforced horizontally and vertically. So horizontally and vertically, when we need to refer with the earthquake seismic codes, which recommends that have a vertical reinforcement, and as well as the horizontal bands, the sill band, the lintel band, the roof band, and the plinth beam, and the diagonal bracing. All these things, they are talking about the earthquake resistant features. And as we informed, the gross floor area is about 42 square meters, divided into 2 bedrooms, 9 square meter each, and a common area of 18 square meter, and a porch of 6 square meter. So as I discussed with you about 3 stages, stage 1, which is a partial construction. So here the communities, who are the stakeholders? The communities, they have also provided some kind of informal, the unskilled labor at this process, and the local builders, because for a group of some of the local builders were hired by the contractors, and the construction supervisors for every group of 30. So you have 1 supervisor who is looking at it. There is another, which is a social promoter, who is looking at the whole community level, and for 50 to 70 households is one of the social promoter has been appointed. In that way, there is a clear transparency, and there is a clear the flow pattern of the communication from starting from a household to group of households to the community level, and also across various smaller communities. So what they did was, in the initial stage, they done the excavation and laying of the foundations as per the codes. The earthquake resistant structure has been built, and the walls were built about till sill level, about 1.7 meters in the bedrooms and 1.1 meter in the remaining areas. So the roof was built and covered paving. So this is stage 1 is, you can see the vertical reinforcement. And the stage 1 is completed with a half finished product with a small roof, walls and the basic structure. There is no windows, there is no doors, nothing. Then in stage 2, this is where the completion by owners. So communities also have provided. So in the earlier stage, the materials were provided because these concrete blocks were not available locally. So the agencies have provided the concrete blocks. But in here, the communities, as per their feasibilities, as per their available resources, they have developed. They bought the doors and windows. And here, the master builders, apart from the social promoters, the master builders and the bricklayers have provided training for the communities, so that they understand the basic construction techniques, because that will help them tomorrow. If something happens, they can do by themselves. And the lintels and of the doors and windows and the walls has been finished with all the plastering and the waterproofing part of it by rough coating on outside walls, and finishing touches applied to the whole house. So this is the stage 2. But then if you look at the contributions, the Red Cross have provided the materials which are not available locally, and they also provided some kind of workshops to organize this whole process. And in a technical support and monitoring, because they need to provide the technical support to the communities, and one master builder per community. So for each community, they have given one master builder, one bricklayer for each 20 houses, and 11 social promoters in total of the whole 582. So in family, they have provided the materials like the gravel, sand and things like that, and also the doors and windows, and they also provided the labor, which got training later on. And the stage 3, the service completion of it, the water supply and sanitation. So here they installed a sink with 2 taps, a system of removing grey water connected, a system in each houses for the excreta disposal, and there has been also some workshops which has been conducted for the community, the training and interactions. So the community needs, how are these identified? Because this is where the participatory diagnosis have been implemented to describe the community, what the community was and how they are, learn about their needs, and analyzing the current community situations. So this has been the descriptive role of a community have actually given a significant understanding of their needs and wants and the feasibilities. And even after this construction, people have been engaged in certain training process, because they need to get into understanding how to maintain these service aspect, how to maintain the grey water takeoff, or the water supply aspect, the sanitation aspect, or the waste disposal. So they have been got training on the cleaning the area around the house, removing superficial runoff water, house maintenance, construction of natural barriers, protecting slopes, planting trees, and extending the house. Some kind of awareness has been programmed with the community. And with this, there has been various public projects like schools, like there's one school of Hogar del Nino, which has been developed on a house for people with physical and mental disabilities, which has been constructed, and there are 6 educational centers which has been constructed to cater the needs of the community. And looking at the timeline, we have about 500, what are the results? Starting from the 2001, from May onwards, it is about the planning and drafting of the project document. So it looked at analyzing the needs, the combination of the cooperations of different agencies, and how to go ahead with it. And then in August, somewhere, the construction of the pilot house have been constructed. And so September, October, we see the social promoters were hired and the tender documents were issued and awarded to successful construction companies to carry on with the construction aspect. And this is where the stage 1, which we discussed about the unfinished structure, the basic skeleton of the house. And here we talked about The stage 2, where the communities have come forward and they put some materials and they raise some funds for buying some materials, and this is where the stage 2 have occurred. And the stage 2, in the last stage, when they are about to get, so they looked into the service infrastructure as well. So what are the results? Now, there's been a constant community involvement and a participatory workshops have been, like you can see that every morning the community's team is meeting and learning different aspects of their housing project and how to go ahead with it. So that is what they worked on, a motto, learn as you work. And the one thing is the main users themselves have played an important role in their own recovery. And what are the direct impacts of this progressive housing? 97% of the population have been covered, new employment have been generated, and improved the standard of living, strengthening the social networks because they start working together, breaking cultural stereotypes of women involvement, because women has been a major asset and where people came forward to be part of the recovery program in terms of decision making, the construction. And the El Salvador Red Cross has active role, the local Red Cross. And even after 5 years, one can see that how they are able to maintain the gardens, the fabric of the house. What are the constraints? Every project will have its downturns. Difficulty for communities for finding finances in the stage 2, because what they do is, in order to procure the materials, some people are able to afford, some people may not, and then they used to collectively do some plays or shows to gather some funds. And that also has an impact on the specific deadlines of the project. And the other thing we did discuss about the tenure and the ownership, the legal procedures regarding the land ownership, which also took some time. And the study concludes that active participation from the community is a viable alternative, because that is more flexible. In many of the cases in this course, what we are studying is a participation. Families able to meet their economic obligations, and they are expected to, as they will be expected to make a hefty contribution. So in that way, they have been organizing themselves, and extensive knowledge of the country, culture, and its life is a paramount. So one has to work with the local communities. The trust has to be developed, and only a part of it has been developed, and the remaining part has been developed by the users. And how to optimize the time taken to carry out the project. There are some constraints how the families have a very amateur level of supervision. That is also because they may not be building from the building background. Role of social promoters was a crucial importance, because they had developed a trust between the community and the Red Cross. Training of local people in social and technical, so that has given them some kind of employment scope, that they can work as a masons, they can work as skilled persons. So these are some of the understanding from the El Salvador case, and how it slightly differed from the core building approach to a progressive housing approach, and how communities are involved in the process of it. I hope this helps you. Thank you very much.